Hi, everybody. It is Tuesday, September 22nd. You have two assignments due this week. One of them is the peer review on other people's papers that is due tomorrow night by 11:59, and the final copy of paper number 1 is due on Sunday night. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the peer reviews and then the final copy of your paper and direct you to something important I think you should be looking at and reading on Blackboard. In terms of peer review, if you did not write a rough draft for paper number 1, you can still do the peer review, and you still should, or you won't receive a grade for it. Or you will, but you'll receive a 0 grade. You have been distributed 2 papers. So just randomly 2 papers were distributed to you to read and comment on. And I've given you the instructions on how to do that on the PowerPoints in the week 5 folder. We are in week 5. This is a transitional week. We have 2 assignments due because we're at the end of the play, and then we're also starting short story. So week 5 will have a lot of documents in it. Just keep up with the week 5 folder throughout the week. After you've done the peer reviews, then you can begin revising your paper. And so what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about overall things I saw in many papers that need some help. I did obviously give you all individual comments on your papers. I read them carefully. I provided comments both in bubbles and in writing and with grammar throughout the paper. So check the PowerPoint on how to read your comments and see what I've had to say. I do have the function in Blackboard to see who has read the comments on their draft. So if you never do read the comments before the final paper is turned in, that suggests to me that you're not interested in what I've said about your paper. And I spent time reading that so I could give you some help. This is a composition class after all, even though we're reading literature. So anyway, let's talk about MLA format. I did post a video earlier in the semester about how to create MLA format for your paper. When you are directly quoting the play, you put quotation marks around all direct quotes, so anything that's word for word quoted. And then after the quote, you put in parentheses the last name of the author, which is Hansberry, and then the page number. You don't need a P. You don't need the word page. You just need Hansberry space 538 or whatever the page number is. Every time you have a direct quote, that is how you quote the play. If you did not use the book, if you used an online version, if the online version has page numbers, use those page numbers. If not, just write the word Hansberry. You will construct a works cited page at the end with one work cited on it, and that is the play. And I will this week give you an example of how that works cited page should look. Let's talk about your thesis sentence. Your thesis sentence needs to be an argument. It needs to be an argument that you are proving throughout the paper. So you are analyzing this play. You're not just summarizing it. And the argument needs to be specific and thorough and detailed. I have an idea for how to write your thesis, or in other words, a thesis model, in the PowerPoint I put on the top of Blackboard called How to Write a Literary Analysis Essay. I'm going to reference that PowerPoint probably several more times, and I've suggested it to you in your papers, at least some of you, and I hope you've seen it because it's right at the very top, but I'm talking about it again right now. The thesis is the last sentence of your introduction. So think about your thesis. You must have at least 5 paragraphs in the paper. An introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion. Paragraphs always start with a topic sentence that tells us what that paragraph will be about. In fact, the topic sentence of a paragraph is like a miniature thesis. The topic sentence is sentence number 1. After the topic sentence, then you will have pieces of evidence from the play to support that topic sentence. Those pieces of evidence are either direct quotes or ideas from the play. After each piece of evidence, you must analyze it. You can't just put a piece of evidence in there without telling me why. Why is that important to your topic for the paragraph? Why is that important for your thesis? Be sure not to summarize the plot too much, however. This is an analytical paper, not a summary. You must use direct quotes in your paper. You will not receive a good grade on your paper if you don't have any direct quotes in it. You should talk about more than just the first half of the play. Remember, the play is a whole. The play ends with them moving into the house after Walter has an epiphany. We need to know the ending in your analysis and what happens with the characters, even if you don't concentrate on it. So to say something like Walter never realizes his dream and Walter is selfish and Walter is egotistical, great, that's all true. But we have to temper that with the fact that he did agree to not diminish his pride or diminish the pride of the 6 generations of the younger family by giving in and being a part of the Tooken and giving up his house. So all of that is just to say, remember the ending. The paper should only be about 20% directly quoted. And in one of my PowerPoints, I gave you a diagram of where to find the direct quote percentage in your paper. You go back to the rough draft, you click the number to the right, and then you'll see exactly where you've directly quoted. That also checks for plagiarism. So to make sure that you haven't plagiarized from another source or that you haven't forgotten to put quotation marks on. If it's over 20% right now, like some of your papers are, the more analysis you add, the less that will be. But just make sure that you're not just adding more and more quotes without analyzing them. Make sure that the title and the author of the play are somewhere in the introduction. So it doesn't have to be in the thesis. It can be in sentence number 1. It can be in sentence number 2, wherever you want to put it, the way that you've structured your introduction. Remember, the title of the play is A Raisin in the Sun. And plays are in italics. They're not in quotation marks. They're not underlined, but we put them in italics. Those are the main things that I noted for all of the papers. Again, you go back to your own rough draft and look at my comments. After tomorrow at 11:59 p.m., when the peer reviews are due, you will be able to go back to the peer review box and read what your peers have written about your paper. So those of you who turned in a draft should have at least 2 peer reviews. Some of you will have more because of the algorithm for how they distribute the papers. So I've also shown you how to read those reviews from the peers. Remember, my comments are in the rough draft box. Your peers' comments are in the peer review box. And they're in 2 different weeks. So you'll have to go to the 2 different weeks to find them. I hope you're finding that the course organization is okay. I decided that I would do it by week, and I think that's working well, at least for me, and I hope it is for you too. If it's not, let me know. What I did, and you probably noticed, is put sort of a table of contents on each folder so that you know what documents are in there. If you need to go back to something, if you know you missed something. Anyway, that's what I have for right now. Please, please, please read the PowerPoint on how to write a literary analysis essay, because it takes you step by step through writing an introduction, a thesis, a body paragraph with sample body paragraphs from a student written paper, and then a conclusion. And it gives you lots of good information. Check back in week 5 as we start our short story unit and for anything else that I might have. Bye bye.